there. In case you're new to me, I'm Casey McKenzie, author of the Shades of Fury urban fantasy series published by Penguin Random House under their Ace Books imprint, and also the author of several indie speculative fiction titles I put out myself. Right now, my amazing agent is getting ready to shop my newest project, which is a romantic mystery I describe as Austenland meets Alias meets Clue. What does that translate to? Regency costumes, murder mysteries, and spy games. Three of my favorite things. I've also got a few fantasy projects simmering on the side that I'm really excited about. That's just a little bit of a background of who I am. Outside of writing, I'm a late diagnosed ADHD woman. I can't talk today, so sorry. I'm a late diagnosed ADHD woman who's also very likely autistic. One of the many people, especially women, who unfortunately slipped through the cracks for decades. For me, it came down to a mix of high-functioning masking, having special interest in people and communication, and being able to perform, quote-unquote, social skills well enough to pass as neurotypical, at least for a while. Lately, I've been captivated by the Audra Winter case that's been blowing up online, especially on TikTok, where I'm not super active, and YouTube, where I spend a lot more time. Part of why it grabbed me so hard is that it hits close to home. Like Audra, I was labeled a child prodigy in writing, praised for my talent from a really young age. I began reading at age 3, scribbling stories by 6, and won my first writing award in 3rd grade. But it wasn't until I hit my teenage years that I really began committing myself to learning the craft. Just as important though, I read voraciously across all kinds of genres, though the ones that spoke most to my soul were fantasy, science fiction, historical romance, and romantic suspense. At one point, I thought about chasing that literary wunderkind dream of publishing super young, but in the end, I decided I'd rather keep leveling up my craft and my life experience before putting myself out there. But keep in mind, I'm not saying everyone has to follow that path. It just happened to be the right one for me. Combine that backstory with my neurodivergent brain, and it's easy to see why this case hit so close to home for me. Now, I'm not going to rehash every single detail of the Audra Winter case. Plenty of other creators have already done deep dives, and I'll link to a few of those below. I also don't want to pile on, especially since I wasn't following her on social media and I didn't buy her book, The Age of Scorpius. What I do want to focus on are the parts that stood out to me as an author, as someone with both traditional and indie publishing experience, and as an AuDHD adult. And I'll also share a few hard-earned lessons that hopefully can help young or simply newer authors navigate the publishing world. For anyone who hasn't been following this story, here's the short version. Audra Winter is a 22-year-old author who became a phenomenal social media success, especially for an indie debut. She grew a huge TikTok following, over 100,000 people, by sharing her passion for her fantasy universe, the world of Guardian, which she's been building since she was a preteen. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and her strategy worked. She racked up more than 6,000 pre-orders for The Age of Scorpius before posting a single excerpt. I can't stress this enough. That's almost unheard of for a debut indie author. In fact, many trad published authors that I know, including myself, would love that kind of success. On top of that, after those sales came rolling in, she pulled together a team of artists to create stunning artwork that built up even more hype for the book. Honestly, that kind of visual branding is genius. I work in marketing by day, and it absolutely fueled excitement. But here's where things seemed to fall apart. Once readers got their hand on the novel itself, many were unfortunately disappointed. According to reviews and social posts, they felt that the focus had been on the cosmetic side of things, the art, the presentation, the packaging, and not enough on editing the story into its strongest form. Now, if you want all the nitty-gritty details, you can check out the creators who've covered it in depth. For me, as someone fascinated by the coverage, I also feel a lot of empathy for Audra. She's young, she clearly poured herself into this world, and she's navigating a very public learning curve. So for now, I personally would like to talk about the lessons that other writers, especially newer ones, can learn from her experience. And I genuinely wish Audra nothing but the best. My hope is that she takes what she needs from this, discards what doesn't work for her, grows stronger as both a writer and a person, and comes back even better for it. On the surface, this might just look like another internet controversy, but for me, it raises some deeply important questions, not just about truth and marketing and personal branding, but about the pressures that young creatives face, the myths that we're fed about genius, and how neurodivergent traits can both help and hinder in high-pressure, image-driven spaces like publishing. As someone who's been writing professionally for over a decade, we might be closer to 15 or 20 years now. I'd have to go back and do the math. And I've also been performing for even longer than that as a competent, put together person as far as other people are concerned for even longer. I see patterns here that feel eerily familiar. The drive to be exceptional, the compulsion to keep achieving, even if you feel like you're drowning inside. The temptation to overstate or embellish when you feel your worth is constantly on trial. Those aren't traits unique to neurodivergent people, but for many of us, they can be internalized and intensified by the way our brains work and by years of trying to prove ourselves in systems that weren't really built to accommodate us. So today I want to break down what I see as the biggest lessons from the Audra Winter case, not to pile on or sensationalize, but to pull out the real takeaways for other writers, creatives, and especially fellow neurodivergent folks navigating the often confusing overlap of talent, ambition, and authenticity, especially when you're starting to use some of your talents to seek commercial success. Lesson 1, passion is powerful, but it's never a substitute for craft. From what I've seen, Audra has spoken openly about being neurodivergent, about her main character being neurodivergent, and about how that shaped both the character's voice and her prose. And honestly, her passion for her world shines through. She's been building it since she was 12, which is an incredible personal accomplishment. But here's the reality of the situation. Once we move from telling stories for ourselves to publishing for others, especially when we're asking people to pay for that work, passion alone just isn't enough. Stories need structure. They need pacing, editing, and prose that carries readers along, not trips them up. If your character's voice is so different that readers can't make it past a few pages, you've lost them. And I say that with empathy as an AuDHD person myself. Representation matters deeply. It certainly does. But we can't always one-to-one translate the way our brains process things directly onto the page if it makes the story confusing for most readers, including many who are also neurodivergent. And that piece of advice goes for all writers, not just neurodivergent folks. It applies to neurotypical people too. A lot of the Age of Scorpius feedback I've seen mentions heavy info dumping in the opening. And that's one of the most common pitfalls for new writers. We may need to know the information in all the backstory and the world building ourselves, but most of it just doesn't belong in chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, often any of the chapters. You will get away with later in the story layering in a little bit more of your world building as you go, but in the beginning, you really need to grip readers with the story and the characters. Readers want characters, action, and story momentum first. World building and themes can be layered in slowly as they become relevant. Passion fuels the writing, but revision is what transforms it into something readers can truly connect with. Lesson 2. Editing is not a personal attack. It's an opportunity to upgrade your story and your skills. I may be older and more experienced now, but I still remember how tough it was, especially early on, to take constructive criticism the way it is intended. Getting defensive when someone suggests that our book babies aren't as flawless as we believe, that's a pretty universal experience for writers. But here's the difference I've seen over time. Writers who learn to accept feedback for the help it's intended to be are the ones more likely to succeed, especially commercially. Not because they blindly follow every piece of advice, but because they know how to sift through the feedback, keep what makes the story stronger, and discard the rest. We're still the architects of our stories, even when an editor is involved in the process. At the end of the day, we need to be proud of what goes out into the world, but when we're working with professional editors, whether we hire them ourselves or they're assigned to us in traditional publishing, their job is to strengthen the book in front of them and us as individual writers. And our job is to grow as much as we can and become better at our craft. Here's the thing, even experienced writers, even people who write clean like I do, and even people who have editing backgrounds like I also do, we still need better readers and editors. We're too close to our own stories to spot every weak spot. A good editor brings fresh eyes and helps reveal opportunities that we usually just can't see ourselves. Remember, a good editor does not erase your voice. They help enhance it. Critiques aren't a threat to your vision. They're a chance to level it up. A well-edited book can be the difference between something readers think is fine and something they absolutely rave about and try to push into everybody else's hands. Treat editing as a collaboration, not a confrontation. Lesson 3. 10 years building a novel world does not equal 10 years of story growth. Most of us longtime writers have a story of our heart, or even an entire universe that we've been nurturing since we were wee baby authors. But here's the catch. Spending a decade loving a story world isn't the same as spending a decade growing the skills to execute that well. Sometimes we get stuck in the exact version that we first fell in love with and we don't grow. That's why so many experienced authors and editors advise putting aside those first or second books of the heart and working on other projects before circling back. Because when you're starting out, you just don't know what you don't know. And that includes me still today sometimes. Every new project teaches you something different, whether that's structure, pacing, prose, dialogue, character work, and all of those lessons add up. They help you grow into the author that you are. By the time you return to that passion project, you're far more equipped to do it justice. Let your world and characters grow past your original vision, even if it means letting go of certain cherished elements along the way. Your story will be all the better for it. Lesson 4. It's better to launch strong and steady than rush into the spotlight. When you're starting out, it can be tempting to chase that big splashy debut. I get it. We all want to prove ourselves to show the world what we can do. But here's the truth. A writing career is a marathon, not a sprint. Rushing into the spotlight before your work is truly ready just doesn't do you any favors. Readers only get one first impression of you as an author. If that first impression is a book that needed more editing, more time, or more patience, it can be much harder to win them back later. Taking the time to polish your work, even if it feels slow, sets you up for stronger, longer lasting success. And I'm going to put a little personal anecdote here. I was very fortunate to get a pretty good big deal with my first 3 books, the ones that were published by Penguin Random House. It went to auction, 3 publishing houses bid on it, and it ended up going for very low 6 figures. I'm just saying very low so that nobody thinks it was like almost $1 million or something. I very much appreciated the amount that it was. I came in at the tail end of the urban fantasy boom in the, I say, mid-2000s to the 2010s, and the series just didn't perform as well as I think they were hoping, so it did not continue past the first 3 books. I just say this because I haven't given up. Just because I didn't have that initial success that I wanted right away doesn't mean that I'm a failure. I'm still here, I'm still kicking and writing, and I'm hoping to keep working no matter what. Like, writing is my passion. So I say that to help illustrate that it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And in other words, I would like to say slow and steady isn't boring, it's strategic. So rather than rushing in and trying to make a huge splash, I mean, if you can do that, great. But if you can't, don't look at it as a failure. It is a marathon, not a sprint. That brings me to lesson 5. Young authors need space to make mistakes, and so do we all. That brings me to what I think is the most important point of me wanting to share this today. Writers, especially young ones, need room to stumble. Every career has growing pains, and writing is no different. The problem is that now, with social media, those mistakes can happen under a very bright and very public spotlight. Here's the thing. Missteps don't have to define you. What matters is how you take the lessons forward. If you learn a lesson and grow from it, then that was not wasted time. None of us gets anything perfect right out of the gate necessarily, no matter how talented or passionate we are. Writing is a lifelong learning process, and we all get better by doing it. And yes, by messing up sometimes. So let's offer each other and ourselves more grace in that process. At the end of the day, all 5 of these points come back to the same core truth. Writing is both an art and a craft. Passion fuels us, editing sharpens us, patience steadies us, and mistakes teach us. No matter where you are in your journey, whether you're just starting out or you've been at this for decades, the process of growing as a writer never really stops. So my hope is that Audra, like so many of us before her, can take the bumps in the road and turn them into stepping stones for the future. And my hope for you, if you're a writer watching this, is that you'll give yourself both the grace to learn and the discipline to keep improving. Because at the end of the day, every story we write is practice for the next one. And that's a beautiful thing. Oh, we made it through that. If you see me glancing off to the side, it's just because I'm looking at my notes. So I'm going to start trying to post more videos. I haven't been very active these days, mostly because I have a full-time job. I'm a content marketing writer by day, and I've been recovering from a couple of serious injuries the past couple of years, but I'm going to try and get more active and post more videos. I think my goal is maybe to post 1 or 2 a week, probably 1. We'll see if we get up to 2. We'll see. If there's any particular topics or subjects you'd like to see me cover, go ahead and leave a comment. And if you've made it this far in the video, I really appreciate it. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button or like it if you can. That really helps us with engagement. And remember that your stories matter. Keep sharing them 1 page at a time. And as Robert Jordan said in one of my favorite epic fantasy series, stories have power. Hopefully you'll keep sharing yours with other people.